So hey, morning everyone. So finally we are starting. So I am Jayneeta Sinha. I'm from India. I have flown for this talk. It's Devops goes Promptastic. So when we hear prompts, on the first thing that comes to your head is chatgpt, right? We are using prompts for our day-to-day work like writing mails, writing blog posts. You might be using Midjourney for creating images, then whatnot. So if I start counting things, it's endless. So with prompts coming into our day-to-day lives, be it our day-to-day work or coding as well, so my thought went towards why should I not use it for DevOps, right? So when DevOps comes to your head, the first thing that strikes all of us is, oh, that Kubernetes, that AWS, that GCP, all this infra things come to our head. So yes, you're right where you're headed to, but DevOps is not just about the deployment part of it, right? So the entire DevOps journey goes through these 4 cycles. The first one being the design and development, wherein all of us, we create a GitHub repo, we will write some code, right? We will raise some reviews, then we head to the review stage. Your colleagues, your peers will give you reviews, you will fix them. It is followed by the deployment stage, wherein all that we were thinking, the deployment, the Kubernetes, sometimes we don't even understand what pod is doing what, and we are after ChatGPT that, hey, how do I do this in this cluster? How do I scale it, right? All of it. And finally, once, okay, your app is deployed, before you can give a sigh of relief, the monitoring and analysis starts coming into picture, wherein you would be getting alerts for n things in your application, the availability is dropping, the reliability is dropping, you will go and check the Splunk boards, the Grafana dashboards, Prometheus, Elastic Beanstalk, Kibana, Logstash, whatever it is. So this is what the entire DevOps journey looks like. So what my talk is now intended towards is how at each stage of this journey, we can use prompts, right? So let's get started. So a question for, all of you. You're working in infra team, a developer reached out to you to know how to create a GitHub repository, right? How would you help? And the star mark being, the concerned person doesn't want to learn GitHub in the beginning, okay? That's the challenge. So, if it would have been any regular developer, you would have expected that, oh, you should know GitHub, right? That's the basic prerequisite that we expect these days. What we would have told them is, just go to this GitHub, GitHub repository, go in here and, there's a button, click it, and you will be able to generate a repository. Let me just quickly go in here, I'll show you that. You go in and you should be able to create a repository. That's how it looks like. Or the other thing that you would have told them is that integrate with GitHub APIs. The standard way, get a secret key, call the GitHub APIs with some authorization bearer and give a name. Follow that documentation, you should be good with it. Now what if I tell you, right, that I can give another UI to the user wherein the user can give you a repository name and you have shared that, okay, you add whatever repo name that you want to add and this is the secret because it's an internal team, you can share some secrets, let's say it's for testing purposes, and your repo will be there with you. And after that, the developer will learn about GitHub, right? So that's what we are alluding towards now. A very, you can say, not a straight way of creating a GitHub repository, but what I want to introduce here is the concept of Terraform. If anybody of you has not used Terraform, to give them information, Terraform you can treat it as a language for infrastructure. It's infrastructure as code, wherein you can say, hey, I want, I want to VMs, I want one load balancer, I want one, what you can say, I want one Postgres server. You can define it, you will run commands, and those things will be provisioned for you in very simple terms. Going by that same analogy, what we are now going to do here is make use of Terraform to create a repository, so that when we go ahead in the presentation, we all would be able to understand how the deployments and other things work together. Okay, so it's a simple UI you can see, right? So it's not readable. So it's asking for a repo owner. So I was at the infra team. I would say, hey Jayneeta, this is your repo owner name, right? And whatever repo name you want to give that. And this is the secret, add it and fill this form. Your repo would be created. So let's see first of all how it looks like. I have a recorded demo. I have the code also with me on my laptop, but because we are already short of time, I would make use of the recorded demo. So this is the same UI that you were seeing. It's a Next.js application. So I have entered a username. I have entered a repo using prompts. I have entered a secret that the infra guy shared with me. I've just stored everything there, right? And you can see that now the repo will be created, right? See, so this is the Terraform code that is getting generated using prompts. So you will see there's repository name, GitHub token, who was the repo owner. Then in the end you saw those are the variables that got set, which I passed from the UI, right? So these are the three things. Now some Terraform commands are running in the background, and see, it is saying that I will add this, I'll create this. So that's what Terraform does, right? Now we will go to the main GitHub repo for my user and see that is this repo with Promptastic repository created or not, right? So now we are headed off to the, so just a green message, right? So repo using prompts, there it is, right? So let's just go back to where we were, right? So this is what is happening there. UI gets user input, it calls the Gemini APIs of Google with prompts. I will show you how these prompts look like in the code now, right? It uses prompts to generate the Terraform files to create the repository. Then Terraform scripts are run, right? They will finally create a repository on GitHub, and eventually the response is given back to the user. And you can see the repository on GitHub. So this whole demo is intended to show how we can, make use of ChatGPT and Terraform together, Gemini, any chat assistant for that matter, different models. I'm using Gemini 1.5 Pro model of Google to do this, right? Now let's just have a look at the prompt which generated all of this Terraform code. So this is the main crux which is generating that. So you can see I've written you are a Terraform developer, you need to create Terraform files, right? And this is how actually any Terraform repository, even if you are working, would look like at very layman level. It contains variables which are later on, you saw that there were three things, right? Whatever I entered in the UI went in there. So that goes to variables.tf. Then provider is like, okay, GitHub, AWS, GCP, and main.tf is the main logic, right? So, and these are the prompts. So you can see everywhere I'm making use of prompts to generate the content of that file. I saved the content of that file in a directory. I'll show you that directory as well. Locally, I am not sure if I might have deleted it, but let's see, I might have it. Gemini, okay, it's not there. I will create one, no worries. Okay. So yeah, the same thing is happening. But like I said, so there's an issue right now. That's why I was not trying to run it live, because that's what happens with, these frameworks. Like at times, I might be like some token issue with it as well. But the same thing happened, right? It is trying to generate that code, and I would just like to show that right now. Just a second. Okay, wait, it didn't get generated as well. I'll skip that, else we will be short. But like I said, so it was creating all these, 4 things, and that was the code. And eventually I'm doing nothing but, calling the Terraform scripts to, basically I created the repository using Gemini, right? And after that I'm running commands. You can see I went into that directory. After that I'm doing Terraform init. Plan was nothing. Terraform plan shows you what are the components, what are the things that Terraform will create. And the last part is Terraform apply, which actually provisions those things. So that's what happened here, right? So, okay, getting back. I hope like everything is clear. If there are any questions, please have it, and we will take it towards the end, right? So we are done with creating the repository. Now the next thing that we will do is we will code, right? So all the UI that you are seeing on the screen was coded using prompts itself. I'm not going into that because every one of us has more or less used ChatGPT or Gemini in some form or other to code. So it's like these days, it's like you give it a prompt, be it any language, it can generate test cases for you, documentation for you, right? HTML, CSS, any language. Even if you say, explain me this code piece, it will do for you, right? So we are done with repo, we are done coding. The next part that comes here is, I want to do a code review, right? So that's what now we are going to do. We are making use of a bot created using GitHub Actions. What it will do is, whenever I will raise a PR from my local machine, as soon as that PR is created, I have made use of prompts to call those Gemini APIs, and I'm telling them, hey, you are a code reviewer, you are an expert in TypeScript, React, and front-end frameworks, and now I have given it a set of rules based on which it will give me comments on the diff. So whenever we are pushing a change, there's always a diff from what you have created, what was there in the past. So it generates that. So we'll go to the GitHub thing. Meanwhile, I'll raise a PR. Okay, it's not coming. Give me a second, I'll raise a PR. And meanwhile that is in progress, I'll just show you the previous run of it. So whenever I raise a PR, what I did is I made use of GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions is similar to Jenkins, Ansible. It's kind of a CI/CD framework in its place, wherein you can define a bunch of steps or jobs to do, run your unit test cases, perform some validations and other things. So here also you are seeing that I have, in this GitHub action, I have set up 7 to 8 things, which is like, check out my repository. After that, I'm doing a diff, whatever was present versus what I have added. Then I am saying perform code review with GPT-4. This is the point wherein I have integrated with, this time it's not Gemini, it's ChatGPT that I have used. It's ChatGPT 3.5 turbo model. So there are different models which are available for different purposes. ChatGPT 4 is much advanced model, but it's paid one. So I've made use of 3.5. So it is doing code review, and after that what I am doing is whatever is the output coming from the ChatGPT calls, I am adding it as a comment on the PR, right? So these are the things, right? So I will just expand the main stage, which is code review with GPT-4. So you can see this is nothing but the diff that we created using the previous step, right? So it is just saying, hey, these are the things that happened. After that, this is my main prompt that goes, performing code review with GPT-4. Then I've given it n set of rules, right? And it is doing that. It is calling the ChatGPT APIs, right? And in the end, eventually whatever output that it gives, I'm saying added back to the PR, right? I'll show you that as well. So see. So it is giving you an improved version of the same file for now. Let's see what happened with another PR that I raised. Hopefully it should work. Fingers crossed. See. So it is giving you code snippets, whatever you have added, not very optimized way. The way we review is we go to the line number and we give you the comment. So not similar to that right now, but this is how, in all of our enterprises or companies, what we could integrate with these APIs and make our lives easier. Basically, it is aiding me as a reviewer to do this analysis. So, like you said, so it is saying if something is good, it is also saying, hey, you have done a good job, right? So it is then saying that this is how confidentiality, security purposes, I might have just added some dummy code in the file, right? Because all of this is POC code right now. So it is giving me a better version of the same file, right? It is giving me better names as well. So that's how we can make use of, GPT, or I would say the GenAI models in the reviewing process, right? So code review done, PR creation done, everything done. So the next stage is now I want to deploy my code, right? So let's go back. Yep. So here we are. Prompt it and get your infra provisioned, right? So what it is doing is, in very simple terms, so this tries to, introduce us to the concept wherein, so we all are not DevOps engineers, by the way, or not each one of us is very well equipped with the concept of, Terraform. I explained, like, very less people are hands-on onto it, wherein, or I'm very not hands-on in understanding all the intricacies of AWS, GCP, or Azure, wherein I am saying that, create a load balancer, create a security group, create Postgres. But what we all, as I'm just talking about the development part of it, is each one of us is aware about architecture diagrams, right? Wherein, let's say, I will just show you a simple thing. So it's a very simple architecture, right? Wherein I am saying there are two web servers. Each one of them is hosted on an EC2 machine, a virtual machine on AWS, and both of them are talking to an Amazon DynamoDB table and a S3 bucket. This everyone can understand. But if I tell someone that, who is not used to Terraform, who is not used to AWS, but just knows about these things from a design perspective, that can you please write a CI/CD pipeline or an infra provisioning pipeline for this? Many of them would come back to me and say, hey, no, I don't think I can go do it in one go. Can you give me a week or couple of weeks to understand what is this all about? And maybe the timelines are not that easy for us to take that leeway. So what can help in such scenario is, just imagine if there could be a simple UI wherein you could, upload your architecture diagram, something like this. This is a very simplified version of it for all of us to understand the concept, right? And basically I will give this architecture diagram to the model, and I will give some additional augmented information telling that, DynamoDB is having these fields, 2 attributes are of string type, another are of number type, there's one primary key, right? Something like that, and there's one S3 bucket which is going to hold objects, and I can just tell that create an IAM policy. IAM policy is nothing but an access policy which helps other resources to access the other resource. You can think of it like the ACLs, the access control lists, right? So if something like this could be done, it would make the life of developers and even in fact the infra team easy, because as developers or as other people, you could just tell them, hey, go to this page, upload your diagram, and get your infra provisioned. Right? Definitely, it's not like it would be one go everything. It might need some intervention from us as well, but it will make the process really smooth. So that's what the last second part of it aims at, wherein I am saying that you give me some information. So what I did is there are 2 web servers, 1 DynamoDB table, the same thing that we discussed. Right? Now what I will do is I'll just upload an architecture diagram, right? And now I will want, what I expect in return is these all should get provisioned, right? So let's see at least first what happens. So we are going by the similar analogy of what we did of creating a repository using Terraform. So now that you all understand how Terraform works, I am just extending that concept towards the actual infra, right? I'll just call the API and let's see what happens in the logs, okay? So it takes some time. So see, it is creating a bunch of code in place like it did the last time. Right now I have not run the Terraform init, plan and apply scripts because I definitely need to check them as well, right? Because it's going to cost me now. Repository was easier, even if it fails, we are good. But in case of these things, at least see if I am able to aid a developer with this code. Right? Definitely they can go to, you would say that they could go to chatgpt UI itself or the platform itself to do this. Yes, they could do, but then you are exposing your private architecture diagrams on the internet. Definitely, even now they would be doing, but they are through API calls, and whatever you are doing would be stored on your own premise or on your own server processing, I would say, in a manner, right? And this UI would be available to all of your developers in your company. So like you see, so there was a DynamoDB table, right? A bucket in place. I'll just go to the exact files. It won't output that much. So I've just created a repository. So notes app, I gave a deployment name, right? It is just having a main.tf because we are saying, hey, have everything in here, right? So see all of it. It is writing. And somehow it has stopped. I guess there's a token limit on the call. I need to batch the call as well. But this is what it can, the way it can help us to do development. So this code might be wrong as well in its place, but the whole idea was to, give a POC on how we can make use of the chat assistants, which we are already using in the field of, infrastructure as well. Right? So, right now, every one of us, so it was Bard by the way, but now it's Gemini. So, from all these 3 things, right, the 3 stages, and what we also saw is, I called the API in runtime and it failed, right? So that what happens at times with the GenAI APIs itself. You call it 10 times or 100 times. Out of 100 times, for 5 times or 7 times, it can lead to wrong results. So when you play with anything for that matter, so these are the kind of issues, when we talk about infrastructure, it's not a very straight game to implement all of it or automate each part of it. So it's like, our bot is crying because let's say you want to, I asked a question to it, I remember. So I'm a fan of cricket, okay? So the World Cup final was between India and the other team was Australia this year, right? And India lost. I just asked it, who won the ICC World Cup 2023, 24 I guess. So it was like, sorry, I don't have the data to answer your question, right? So it is limited to the knowledge on which it's trained, and training these models is really expensive. So same goes for infra issues. So I've tried with Gemini, giving it the Terraform documentation links. Even after giving those references, Gemini has access to links, but ChatGPT doesn't have. It's static in nature. So what happens is, it is not able to give you very correct results. Then, like I said, if you repeat the same question 2 or 3 times, you can get varied results. So fine-tuning the models according to your needs is difficult. And inconsistency, I have already shown. Bugged infra code even after giving documentation references. And you saw the bugged code in action in the last demo that I gave. So that's what, regarding the issues, at least I saw when I was playing around with it, right? So last thing, so everything is done, your code is good, running in production, now you get a issue, right? Reliability is down to 70%. What would you do? In normal scenarios, what happens is, alert comes, you are on call, you are live site or whatever, pager duty person, right? You get paged, you get a call on your phone, you need to acknowledge it within 15 minutes, else your manager is pinged and then you face the consequences. So after that, eventually you will check the logs on Splunk, Kibana, Prometheus, Elastic Logstash, whatever logging platform or the metric platform that you are using for gaining insight into your systems, or AWS console also for that matter, right? You will check the API hits, you will check, okay, between these timestamp the reliability dropped, then you will start finding out the trace IDs, how many calls and all of it, right? You are the person who will be correlating all of this and arriving to a conclusion that this is the root cause, right? And all of it, at least for me, takes a minimum of half an hour, right? Half an hour to 1 hour before I can even collect all the data and arrive to something in my head that this is what is happening within my system, right? So that takes time, and definitely when you are on very critical systems, the time expectancy, like if you have a P0, if you have a P1, the expectancy is that you resolve it within 2 hours, right? Then it gives a lot of headache on your head. So the last, I don't have a demo for this, but the last part of it is about how we can again make use of prompts and make our lives easier. Is what I will do is, I don't know, the last part is not clear, but I'll just quickly make it readable. Yeah, here we go, right? So what we could do is, we could just have a pipeline, a normal pipeline that, okay, whenever reliability drops, right? As an engineer, I will call the Splunk APIs. Between always every alert has a timestamp. Give those timestamps to the APIs, get the same logs from Splunk, Grafana, Kibana, whatever in places, collect that. Now tell Gemini, tell ChatGPT, between these timestamps, check, you could, if there's a particular API that is dropping, you could configure it to, hey, tell me what are the number of hits it is getting, right? Rather than doing all these steps manually that you were doing up till now, you will configure your domain expertise into a pipeline, into an action, right? You could have 10 small pipelines with you. Definitely it's not that scalable that wherein I'm saying, okay, I'll create 100 pipelines for 100 alerts. But in these kind of situations, at least you can get correlated data with you, right? So that's the last part of it, I would say, wherein I am saying trigger the pipeline, write prompts to collect the data from logs and dashboards, and write basically you will have the way I made use of prompts in different places, use that to correlate the data. And basically now the part that took you 1 hour, maybe now that takes you 30 minutes or 20 minutes to arrive to a conclusion. So yeah, these are the 4 stages that I thought about and I thought of sharing with each one of you here. So yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Well, fantastic presentation, Jayneeta. And really wonderful to know the way how we can use technologies like GenAI and using it for the help of the developers, not only developers, but also who works in support and DevOps. It's really helpful. Just one thing I would like to know that, because as you mentioned, ChatGPT is another, it's an open, a platform for everyone, and putting our code, which is proprietary for our company, directly, putting into ChatGPT would not be so secure. So just wanted to ask a future scope if we can integrate GitHub Copilot, which also provides similar feature, and it would be actually doing the same things what you just mentioned.
Yeah. So GitHub Copilot, I believe, has been recently introduced, right? So I might have not looked at it, but definitely, so the Copilot, Microsoft is making it paid to the enterprises. So people might buy it, like we buy the other services of Azure, AWS. You have Code Whisperer on AWS as well, by the way. So definitely it would. So with AI, or I would say GenAI coming into place, there are a lot of laws or things that are yet to come in. So earlier, for example, in Europe, you have GDPR in place, wherein you cannot bring the Europe Union's data outside the Euro boundaries. Similarly, I think in future maybe we would have rules for Gen AI generation as well. Right now everything is limitless. Nobody cares, nobody knows actually that where our data is going, how is it being stored, or even if we know, the laws are not that transparent enough for the layman language. I would put it that way.
Well, thanks for the talk. I actually had a question. So the last part you spoke about using LLMs like GPT for analyzing logs. I'm curious as if these data sources or observability tools like Splunk, Kibana, etc., are they developing similar built-in AI solutions for analyzing their logs?
I think they would for sure, because it's not just us who are thinking like that, right? I think even I was having a look yesterday, so I have Kibana, I was playing yesterday on Kibana. So for example, I think so. I did see plugins coming in, and for sure I believe they would, else why would people buy their solutions, right? So I think so they would be having, and they should.
Thanks. And another question. So, yeah, we saw the architecture, your architecture diagram for generating the Terraform. I'm curious, where does it get the configs that are specific for your AWS cluster, for example, the host and the pod permissions?
Yes. So you remember when we were doing the GitHub thing? So there's a Terraform.tf VAS that got generated. I'll just go back to the demo, right? So right now, the UI that I was showing you locally, right, it is something that the enterprise would host it internally, right?
Okay.
I could have couple of more fields or in that form, just add more metadata, wherein you can say the cluster IP is this, or this is the region, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't add any region if you saw my metadata description.
Okay.
So you can always add more data, so that this is my architecture diagram. And you can say the entire infra is hosted in US West 2, right? Region US West 2, and these are the range of IPs that I'm looking at. So it starts becoming more specific as and when the person who is giving that prompt is more expert in that area, I would say. For example, if you are a DevOps person who knows the AWS thing in and out, right? You will give more metadata to augment that image. Versus, let's say I'm a developer who doesn't know about AWS in general. I am more of a person who just wants to get the infra for testing purposes, right? Then I would expect the person who has written the backend code, right? For example, we were going in here, right? There's this create infra. I've just written a simple one, create infra using, okay, it's not shared. So I've written this way. So I've just kept it very simple, wherein there's a vision model. I'm making use of Gemini here. I'm giving it a prompt, which is just a single prompt right now with the architecture description as a parameter, right? So if you are an expert person, you will give more metadata. Versus if I'm a person who just wants to do testing, what I would expect is whoever is writing this piece of code to do the heavy lifting for me. That you do whatever requires. I'll just tell you, hey, for my testing, let's say I want to do scale testing. I'll say I need 10 web servers, I need 2 DynamoDB tables, I need 1 S3 bucket, right? And I'm good. Another developer might come in and say, hey, I need 2 buckets, I need 2 web servers, and I need 1 DynamoDB table. But the backlifting of these configurations, then the DevOps person is doing it. So we are making the life easier for one set of people, and at the same time you're automating a lot of it. Otherwise, you know what would happen? A person comes, you're like, okay, they'll come to you and say, okay, can you give me a pipeline which I can run? Every time they're coming in, wherein you have given a UI, you're saying, okay, go in there, give me basic information, and I'll do that for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I just have one more question. Yeah, do you also have steps? Yeah, we saw the few steps that included the GitHub hooks. Yeah. And yeah, you did mention during the presentation, maybe out of 100 or 1,000, you get 4 or 5 errors.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you also need to add like safeguards to prevent like over provisioning, for example, 1,000 extra large instances? And so yeah, there will be steps in that. You have to configure the constraints, and then you have to configure the monitoring and alerting just in case the constraints you configure are wrong. Yeah.
So just to reiterate your question.
Yeah.
So basically you're asking about should we safeguard against the infra provisioning, as well as, you know, when people are calling us, they should not just be exploiting or abusing my UI in a way, right? Or abusing the CTS resources. So I think always safeguards or even, so 2 questions are there. One is the inconsistency with the API, that's one. And the second question is regarding the safeguarding. So the first one regarding the consistency of the APIs, I think we need to retry. There's nothing else we can do right now. It's as good as saying, hey, there's an API that fails, you know, 99.99 reliability, but one of the times it fails. So just try again. That's the answer to it. And the second part wherein you are saying that the CTS should not be exploited, I think every AWS account or GCP or Azure, there's one limit that is enforced from the account side wherein you can say per user, you are not going to allow more than, you know, X rupees, X dollar of usages for this user. Per user $10, let's say, right? This service. And the other way of putting it is across your organization or at the service level. It's same as saying there's a rate limiter present at the global level within your gateway, and the other is a rate limiter which is present within your service. So both of them are necessary, and like you said, you know, you could gracefully degrade. You can say, hey, I'm not going to allow anything after this. Your quota is exhausted, which is per user rate limiting in a way. So yeah,
Thank you.
Hope that helps.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, folks.